my friends, and happy Thursday night. It's a beautiful day, and we are going to be making, well, I hope you love the bracelet, of course. I want to say a beautiful bracelet, but I probably shouldn't say that about my own design. But I am very excited about this one, you guys. And you will see in just a minute why. Not only are we highlighting the beauty of the natural stone, but I'm also really excited about showing you some very fun little tricks. Something that I have not yet done in these videos. So I can't wait to get started. So this is what we are making today. And we call this bracelet, oh my goodness, what did we call
Dainty
it?
Gems.
Thank you, Tony. Dainty Gems Bracelet. And we have two versions. One is, of course, well, actually, these are both my favorites. We have Amazonite and Watermelon Tourmaline. And between these two bracelets, this is pretty much my go-to colorways. Most of the time, I would say, at least 50% of the time. So while we're saying hello, I'm just going to show you how this works because I know not everyone is familiar with smart beads. So we have the smart bead on the chain, and all we do is just slide the smart bead down to put on the bracelet.
Fonda says, good evening, everyone. Happy Friday Eve.
Hi, Fonda. Thank you so much, and happy Friday Eve to you, my friend.
Ellen says, hi, Irina and everyone.
Hi, Ellen.
Pammy J says, hello, Irina, Tony, Lauren, and all.
Hello, Pammy J.
And Connie says, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Connie. Well, I'm so glad you guys are joining me today for this video. So I know these look very simple, and actually they are very simple. However, I am about to give you a really fun solution for a lot of stringing issues, I would say. Not that we really have issues with stringing, but well, I guess, just wait a couple of minutes and there will be the big reveal.
Katie S says, good evening, all. Happy Thursday.
Hi, Katie, and happy Thursday to you, my friend.
And our local friend Barb says, good evening, everyone. Have been looking forward to this all day.
Hi, Barb, and thank you so much. Is this the Barb of the bracelet class last night? It's so nice to hear from you. And so I'm just showing you the smart beads. And again, for anybody who is not familiar with the smart bead concept, so the smart bead is you know what? I should have just grabbed a couple of smart beads to show you, but I didn't. And these smart beads actually come as part of the bracelet. So they're kind of built in. The bracelet is already attached to this bead, or rather the bead is already on the two ends of the bracelet, and you do not have to worry about putting it on. But let's just have a definition of what a smart bead is. It's a bead like this that is normally metal on the outside, but on the inside of the bead there's this flexible silicone center. So because of that, the silicone holds on to the chain, or sometimes we use it with leather, and you're able to slide the bead to whatever spot on the bracelet you want, and it will just stay in that spot because of the flexibility of the silicone inside of it.
Barb says, yes, it's me. I was working on one more copper today.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I'm so happy you're excited about making the copper bracelets.
Patricia says good evening, all.
Hi, Patricia, and good evening.
Linda says hello.
Hello, Linda. Okay, guys, so I cannot wait to get started. So I was thinking, this is sort of how this bracelet came about. I'm always making these little bracelets that can just kind of go on my wrist with all my other bracelets, and this is like my little bracelet party. And I love making these bracelets that can all be worn together, right? Some are just a little more chunky, some are really slender. I do happen to really like these 4mm faceted gemstone beads, and I was looking for a good way to highlight their beauty. And of course, whenever we just want to highlight a certain type of bead, one of the ways is to knot between the beads. A different way, of course, would be to use spacers, and I did think about that for about a minute, and then I rejected it. I just really didn't want to introduce another bead. I just wanted a little bit of fiber showing. And then when I went to actually start the project, do you know what I realized? I realized that the Ceylon that I normally use for knotting does not go through these. So now you're probably thinking, I switched stringing materials. But no, I did not. Because so the standard Ceylon is 0.5 millimeter in diameter. And then if you go to the micro Ceylon, that is just so thin. I don't know, I think it's like 0.18 or 20, something like that. And don't quote me on this because I'm just guessing. So it was way too thin. So really, I was looking for something that is in between the size of the standard Ceylon and micro Ceylon. But you know what? There's no such animal. There's one other size, but it's really so much closer to the standard. And I also did not want to switch to griffin cord for a variety of reasons. Color being one of them, because of course griffin cord does not come in the same variety of colors. So I wanted to stick with Ceylon. So let me do the big reveal of one of the new tips. I don't think I've ever done this doing a video.
Carmen says hello, all.
Hi, Carmen. I'm so glad you joined us. Okay, ladies, so what I have in my hand is a length of Ceylon. And let me first say that Ceylon is made out of three, it's almost like 3 twisted strings, right? So if we untwist it just a tiny little bit, we can separate one of the strings. So this is, okay, sometimes you know what's a lot easier is just to hold on to it with the flat nose pliers and untwist. Okay, so that worked nicely. And now I'm just separating one of the strings. And yes, you probably guessed it by now. I am going to separate and remove one of the strings. So this way, our Ceylon is going to be 33% thinner, right? So this is how easy it is. Do you see how it's like, I'm just pushing it down, and I'm just going to do a little pulling, a little pushing. I don't even need to do any pushing. It's that easy.
Lori says hi.
Hi, Lori, and I'm so glad you joined us today. Okay, so this is what I have. I just separated 1/3 of our Ceylon string. And what I found out is that for the beads that I chose from this project, the thicker side is just right. It is absolutely perfect. You can always save the skinny one for something else, but I will be using the one string that now consists of two-thirds of our Ceylon, right? We lost 1/3.
Katie says, great idea.
Thank you so much, Katie. So not only will this go through our string very, very easily, but also it will be, because it's a bit thinner, it'll be a little bit more drapey. Okay, guys, so in the meantime, here is my bracelet. And as I said, this is how these bracelets are sold, with the bead already on the bracelet. And so before we start, this is probably a good time to talk a little bit about sizing. So as is, the bracelet will probably fit, oh, I don't know, somebody with, I'm just guessing at this, with an 8 to 9 inch wrist. However, it is fully adjustable. So let's say if you were to just wear this bracelet by itself, which you could, and we do carry these in the Etsy shop. So this is what it would look like. So you just kind of roll it onto your wrist. I didn't push the bead all the way down, but you can push it all the way down. And the reason I'm not saying exactly what size it will fit, because it also depends on the size of your hand. So just for fun, we tried it on Tony, and it actually did not fit over Tony's hand. He doesn't have a very large wrist, but he has a big hand, so the bracelet would not fit over his hand. But that's okay, because we can actually make it much longer by adding our beads, which is what you're about to see. But we're talking about sizing. So if I pull the bead all the way down, all of a sudden this bracelet is so big. And if I want to make it a little shorter, I can most certainly adjust it in multiple ways. One of the ways to adjust the length, either shorter or longer, is to cut out a segment, and when you replace that segment, you just adjust it to your own size. For example, to make the sample, I cut out a segment of 6 inches, and then I replaced it with about, maybe 4.5, 5 inches. But that's not the only way to adjust it, and I will talk about different ways to adjust it as we continue with the project.
Linda S. says greetings.
Hi, Linda, and thank you for joining us today. Okay, guys, so I'm just going to pull these ends out just a little bit. And so now I am going to measure 6 inches. And of course, because the bracelet is not linear, it's a continuous loop, we're not able to measure a straight 6 inches. So instead, we are just going to say that if we cut right where it says 3 inches, it will be perfect, right? So that should work. So I am going to cut the lengths. And normally I usually tell people not to use their good cutter with stainless steel chain. So really, if you want to be good to your cutter, that is, just open the rings. These are very tiny little Rollo links, and they open up. So you can always just use your chain nose and flat nose pliers if you want your cutter to last long. And sometimes I'm in a hurry and I do use my good cutter for something like this, but I just want to show you my cutter because the chain it's stainless steel, however it's very thin, so my cutter is fully intact and beautiful, and I have not done any harm to it. Okay guys, so our next step is going to be putting the end of our string through one of the links. And you know, if you really wanted to, you could make a self needle, which would probably make this process a little easier. However, as you just saw, it's not all that hard. So, and I will still demo how to make a self needle with the other end. So I put my string through with just enough of a tail so that I can tie a knot very easily. And this is just going to be an overhand knot. And I like placing it about 1 to 2 millimeters from where it is attached to the chain. So we're going to take our time placing the knot, make sure it's nice and snug. And the reason I like just a little bit of space between where it's attached to the chain and the knot is because we are about to cover it with a crimp cover or a knot cover in this case. So I'm going to use my super new glue, and we always put the glue on the short end, the end that is not our working end. And we're just going to let the glue run down to the knot. We don't want to over glue our knot, which is why I always start on the non-working side of the string and just kind of let it run down. If there is any extra, I will remove it with a piece of paper. And on the opposite end, on the working end of our string, we are going to make a self needle. And I know you guys have seen me do this like a schmillion times, but this is a schmillion and first time. And as you can see, I'm just putting a very tiny amount of my super new glue again on the end of the string. And we're going to draw the string a couple of times through a little folded piece of paper. That's all it is. And this should dry rather quickly. And then we're going to be able to use it as a self needle. Now, in the meantime, our first end should be dry, the end we glued first. So we are about to do something with it. However, before we do, I am just looking at my crimp cover, and it looks like it has a nice opening. I actually don't even need to open it wider, which sometimes I do. We can if we must, but for this, it's just right, I think. So I am going to cut off the excess string, that non-working end of the string. And you remember how the crimp cover just looks like an open round bead, right? So we're going to take that opening and put it right over our knot. So here it is. So the knot, can you guys see this? The knot is sitting right inside that opening. And I'm about to close the crimp cover with my chain nose pliers. So we are going to just start squeezing. And as you squeeze, just do it a little slowly so that you can really control how it's closing. What we really want to avoid is overlapping the two sides. I don't like to overlap the two sides. So you saw I just squeezed it and I still have this wide open seam. So we're going to want to close the seam. And the way to do it is now from this position of your chain nose pliers, we're going to shift our chain nose pliers where it's sitting just at the edge of that open seam and give it a little push. And now we're going to turn it, and you can already see how that seam is not quite so open because we just closed one side of it, and now we'll do the same on the other side and just do this very slowly so that you can control it and without applying a whole lot of pressure, because it's very easy to just crush this little bead. So here's my little crimp cover, and now we are going to start on the rest of our bracelet.
Barb is wondering if that's a smaller size crimp cover.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is indeed. It is a 3mm crimp cover, which, you know, I really do like the daintiness of it. I prefer to use the 3mm crimp cover whenever I can, as opposed to a 4mm crimp cover. Although I have to tell you guys, I am just a little bit excited because we just got in 5mm crimp covers as well, which are quite a bit larger. And every once in a while I use something where I make a larger knot, and it's nice to have something that's a little bigger as well. Okay, so before I start stringing, I'm going to use my cutter, my wire cutter, which really is good for cutting string or anything else. And I'm just going to cut my self needle at a 45-degree angle. I hope you guys could see that, so that I actually have a little point right there. So it literally is like a little needle. And I'm going to start with the beads now. So we're going to slide the very first bead onto our string via the self needle, and you can see that it's a little bit of a snug fit. And you know, I have a feeling that this is the slightly thicker side of my self needle, so maybe I'll just make it a little shorter right where it gets a little bit skinnier. It's only a function of I probably left a little bit more glue on this side. And we will slide the bead all the way down to the crimp cover. And now I'm about to start making the knot. So this is an overhand knot, right? And you've seen these before where I have made this type of a knot with leather. And this, what I'm about to do, is called a surgeon's knot. And so this just one loop would have been a regular overhand knot. But if we put the string right back through the loop one more time, and now we tighten the knot, and you can see how I'm doing it. I'm just holding onto the bead. The knot never leaves the side of the bead. And this is what the knot looks like. So why am I using the surgeon's knot rather than just a regular overhand knot that we use very often for knotting? Because it is, it's a slightly different type of a knot, and it makes the beads lay a little bit differently.
Barb says, I like the delicate look of this bracelet. Was toying with doing one with 2 strands, but not sure about that yet.
And you could. There's really no reason you couldn't. Okay, guys, so What I want to show you is that, can you see when you make this kind of a knot, it almost looks like a little bit of a double knot, and it's a little bit more decorative looking. But also what it does is it makes your string lay nice and straight. So let me just move this bead for a second. You can see where the string comes out of the knot. And normally, if we're just making overhand knots, the string does a little bit of zigzagging. Whereas with this technique, it's never going to zigzag because the knot somehow just directs it in a very straight way. Okay, so let's do one more. So I do it this way. I wrap the string around my 2 fingers. I put my thumb in the loop. I grab the string, pull it out, and at this point, we add an extra loop just by going through the same loop one more time. Does anybody remember making these type of knots on leather? You can really tell when you're working with leather that this is the way that makes your string very, very straight. And you know what? I don't like how this is working out. So before I tighten it, I'm just going to take it out. Sometimes, you know, when I'm talking and doing this at the same time, it just gets away from me. So this is not a difficult thing, but it does take a little bit of focus. So just bear with me. I really should have stopped and taken it out before I got this far. Okay, so it'll come out. You know, as long as you haven't really tightened it, it should be really easy to take out. And for me, I always do this with my chain nose pliers if I have to take it out, that is. All right, guys.
Ellen says, yes, I do. Brilliant idea. Really showcases the beads.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I really appreciate. Okay, so I just accidentally pulled it and made it worse. You guys, this can happen to anyone. It does happen. It's just not a big deal. Okay, ladies, you know what? I'm not going to fumble with it right now because guess what? We can just through a little magic of Facebook Live, here it is, and it is already just about made. So we're just going to jump into the next step. How about it? And so this is my other chance to demo the knot. And I'll be a little more careful this time. Okay, so we're going to string the next bead on. So I pre-strung and pre-knotted all these beads, and I just left 2 more beads. So we just have 2 more beads to go. So again, we're going to start the knot. We're going to grab it through the loop and then simply put the end through the loop in the same direction one more time. And now, while we're holding on to the bead, we're just keeping that knot right at the bead. And as you can see, we have formed a beautiful knot.
Ellen says, and fills the holes better so the beads don't move.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So this is meant to showcase the beads and kind of fix them in place. And at the same time, the knot separates the bead, and this way you can really see the beauty of each bead. So let's just do one more. And this is going to be my chance to show you the little tiny figure 8 that this knot makes. So if you remember the video where I used leather for exactly the same knot, it's definitely a lot easier to see when you're working with leather. but I'm hoping that you can see the little teeny tiny figure 8 in the sealant. Can you guys? Okay, no, it's hard to see it. Okay, so just take my word. As you're forming the knot, you're going to see a little tiny figure 8, and that's what we're looking for when we make a surgeon's knot. All right, so I have the length that I wanted, which should be just a little bit over 5 inches. Perfect. So just a little over 5 inches. And because, you know, my choice was a little under 5 inches or a little over 5 inches. So you figure out what works for you. And now we are going to tie this end onto the remaining end of the chain. And so here we go through that last link. And of course, as we're tying our knot, and at this point, it's really practical to just make an overhand knot, which kind of makes a little bit of a loop. So it's really more of a loop than a knot. But since we are going to be gluing it in place, it doesn't really matter what kind of a knot you're making, as long as somehow you are attaching it to the other end of the chain. So here it is. And of course, I'm going to put a little tiny bit of glue on this knot. And again, we always want to put the glue on the non-working part of the string and just kind of have it run down to the knot. So you want just to see barely a little bit of a discoloration on the knot itself. And I'm going to put this down for a moment so that I can put the cap back on the glue. So, and I will say that super glue glue is really the best to do this, whether you're gluing a knot or maybe you're making a self needle. I love using this glue. Okay, ladies, so now we are going to get ready to put our remaining crimp cover on our knot. And let's see if the glue is dry. And it's pretty close to being completely dry, so I feel comfortable just cutting the non-working end off. And we'll take our little crimp cover, put it right over the knot. Make sure it's all the way in there. Can you guys see it? And then with our chain nose pliers, we are going to squeeze it together, reposition our chain nose pliers so that we can just work on one side of the crimp cover at a time and close that seam where it just looks like a little round or kind of rondelle shaped bead. So ideally you can barely see the seam. It just looks like a round bead.
Kim K says, just joined, cute bracelet.
Thank you so much, Kim. Be sure to watch the beginning of the video because I shared a couple of tips on this that I have not shared before in any other videos. Okay, so now you remember I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I will come back to the sizing, right? So you probably know the size of your wrist, but again, there's that little issue of your hand fitting through, right? So let's try this on, and I'm going to bring my smart bead closer, so you just kind of inch it up, or maybe in this case it's millimeter it up, right? So I don't know, somehow millimeter it up does not sound quite right, but you guys know what I'm saying. So at this point, you can still decide. So you can't decide to make it longer because, you know, we did cut out a good chunk of this bracelet. But if you feel that it's still a little bit too long, we can certainly make it shorter. So let's do that. Let me remove this. And you know, if you're not quite sure, you remember the very beginning of when we started making the bracelet, and where's my, oh, okay. You remember I cut out this chunk of chain, and this is 6 inches that I took out of the bracelet, and then I started replacing it with our beautiful gemstone beads. So first of all, you really don't even have to cut anything out. You can simply cut the bracelet in half, right? And start attaching your beads. But wait, isn't it going to be too large? Well, yes, of course it's going to be too large. But then once you get to the point where the bracelet is just about finished, except for the little baubles, these little baubles that I like to put on my bracelets, right? Because it makes it look finished. So this is what we're going to do. Regardless of whether you want to make it shorter or not, we are not going to use these little jump rings that come with the bracelet. Because these little jump rings, I'm not a fan, frankly. They're very flimsy and they're not very well closed. So they do serve a purpose. The purpose they serve is not letting the chain pull all the way through and come out of the smart bead. But once they have served that purpose, we no longer need them. So not only are we going to be cutting off these little jump rings, but this is a really, really good time to make the bracelet itself a little shorter if you decide to. So I am just, can you guys see I'm cutting off some of the chain and making the bracelet a little shorter. And if you don't want to make it shorter, just take off the little jump rings, and now we can go on to the next step. So for the next step, I'm going to grab a couple of ball pins. And of course, I will need a couple of beads. And of course, you know, as I said earlier, both Amazonite and watermelon tourmaline are both my absolute favorites. And while there is some variation, very little variation, but there's definitely that beautiful variation that we find in natural gemstone. These are absolutely natural colors, and you know, can you tell I love colors like that? You can see my sweater, you can see my bracelets. So I love all shades of blues and greens, love Amazonite, and of course I absolutely adore watermelon tourmaline. So I like making these contrasting, hence I grabbed one of the beautiful rich pinks and a green. And of course, you know, if you are very particular about what you want to use for a bauble, just set aside a couple of beads you really like, and then you know for sure. Plus, you will most definitely have a lot of extra beads. A lot of extra beads for this project. And so now that I have made, I kind of neglected to mention, I just made a 90-degree angle in both of these, leaving just a little bit of space between the bead and the bend in the wire. And that, of course, is because I am about to make wrapped loops. And when I make wrap loops, I usually do them assembly style. And this is why I'm making the loops right away without switching my tools. And then I'm going to be attaching them to the bracelet. So here are my 2 loops before I wrap them. And now I'm just going to take each one and attach them to the ends of the chain. So one thing you guys might want to do, and I know that some of you were interested in just the bracelet, so of course those are available in our Etsy shop, and this way you can design your own. Or you can get a kit. As I said, they're available in these 2 colors that I'm showing. But either way, whether you design your own or you create the ones that I'm showing from the kit, you definitely do not want to use those little jump rings that come with the bracelet, because they're really on the very flimsy side. They're only good for the purpose I just said, which is just stopping the chain from sliding through the bead, which, you know, they do a good job of that, and that's that. But I would not want to use them in my finished bracelet, because, you know, when you get your bracelets, you will see exactly what I mean. So, but otherwise, I will say it's a really impressive little bracelet. It's very sturdy, the chain is beautiful, and of course the fact that the smart bead is already on it makes everything so very easy. So I just wrapped the loops while I was chatting with you, and I tucked those little tails in, and that's it. That's really all there is to this little bracelet. So let's see how it fits. This one I'm actually making for myself, so hopefully it fits me well.
Randy is wondering what size are the stone beads you're using.
Thank you so much for asking, Randy. They are 4 millimeters. So I will say that the watermelon tourmaline is 4 millimeters, and the Amazonite, can you tell? They're just a little bit larger. So these are 4.5 millimeters. So they're really very close in size. It's about a 0.5 millimeter difference. So what do you guys think? Do you have a favorite? Do you like either one better than the other? I always want to know. And of course, I will put this one on as well, so you can see them side by side. So what do you think about my bracelet party here? Isn't this kind of fun? I love color, and I just love seeing all these gemstones, just having a party. So that's it, you guys. We just finished the project, and I will do a little preview of what is coming up. And I do have some really fun things coming up. As you know, probably some of you at least know, that we are actually having this very beautiful silver, I will say silver and friends trunk show, because it's not just silver, it's silver, copper, bronze, and there's some absolutely beautiful pieces in it. And so I have been including them in my Friday shopping events. And so tomorrow I will have a little more. And I have to tell you that tomorrow is actually our last, no, maybe not, I'm not sure. But either last or next to last event where I'm including the silver. So please do join me tomorrow.
Fonda says both are so pretty.
Oh, thank you so much, Fonda.
Patricia says it's beautiful.
Thank you, Patricia.
And Mary is wondering, what gauge jump rings do you use?
Mary, thank you for asking. It's a good question. I can't really give you a good answer for this because for this particular chain, it's a small Rolo. It's a really small Rolo. So, and partially that is the reason that I actually went with something other than the jump ring because, you know, when you make a wrap loop, it's very nice and sturdy. It holds everything really well. And yet, the gauge of the wire on our ball pins is really quite small. So it's about a 24 gauge. You certainly could not go with jump rings that are 24 gauge because again, they would be pretty flimsy. So for something like this, I really recommend making your ands wrap loops rather than a jump ring. If I had a larger Rolo, I would probably go with 20 or 18 gauge jump rings. I feel that those are so much sturdier. But for this one, let's just go with some type of head pin, ball pin, wire, and make a wrap loop, and that's going to be nice and sturdy without the heavier wire. Okay, ladies, so as I was saying, tomorrow I have a shopping event at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time as usual, and this is going to be on the Eclectica Facebook page. And so we are including sterling silver, some really fun, colorful shells, glass cabochons and settings. That's pretty exciting because last time we sold out. And a few more little surprises, which I literally cannot even recall right now because there's so much really fun stuff that I'm going to be showing you tomorrow. And again, this is tomorrow on the Eclectica Facebook page at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. But wait, you guys, there is more. So I'm also showing you the preview for next Thursday event. And this is called On the Vine Necklace. And so this is going to be, you know what, let me show you the red one. I know it's not quite the time yet, but and we did not necessarily set out to make a holiday project, but you know, it just kind of turned out that way. Sometimes it just takes over and we just, you know, we just sit there and watch it happen. So anyway, so this is called On the Vine Necklace. And this is going to be Thursday, July 27th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on my jewelry design page, which is exactly where you guys are right now. And I kind of overachieved just a little bit this week because I also have a project for the week after that, because you know, I was so excited. If you remember, I did mention that I was going to do a little bit of a redesign of the bamboo bracelet, and so this is what we're doing 2 weeks from now. So this is the bamboo bracelet, and this has been So the first incarnation of the bamboo bracelet has been so popular, and I love it too. It's been one of my favorite projects. So I have actually been wearing my bamboo bracelet a lot, and I thought, you know what? Let me make it with new colors. And I also made it a little bit differently where it's adjustable, whereas before it was not adjustable. So we have a slight redesign. And this is my plan, you guys, for the next couple of weeks.
Pammy J says, love the bracelet party.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Randy says, love.
Thank you so much.
Fonda says, beautiful necklace. I can't wait for this demo. And I'm going up north tomorrow, so I won't be able to watch the whole show tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll miss you, but you have a wonderful time up north. You know, for those of you who are not from Wisconsin, up north means vacation and beautiful nature, and it usually means lakes and all sorts of water activities, and that is all the awesome stuff that up north implies.
Barb says, and the red one matches the bracelet you have on.
You know what? It actually kind of does. It's not an exact match, but you know what, Barb? It is close enough. Okay, and oh, and Fonda, of course we'll miss you tomorrow, but I was gonna say you can always rewatch. Okay, ladies, well, it was such a joy talking to you today and sharing this. I was so excited to share, especially the bit about how you can use your Ceylon a little bit differently, where, you know, if you need a smaller size of Ceylon, so just keep that in mind in your other projects. Ceylon is magical, you guys. I just love working with it, and this gives us another way to do it and make it fit our holes and our projects. So this is just, you know, it's kind of a little bit of a game changer. Okay, well, thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today, and thank you for your wonderful comments. I love it when you comment, when you ask questions, and I really, really love it when you guys give me suggestions. So please don't be shy. If you're thinking of something you would like to make, you're not quite sure how, or maybe you just want to see how I would interpret a specific technique or project, please let me know what it is and I will give it a try. Okay, in the meantime, again, thank you so much for watching, and you have a wonderful and creative evening, and I hope to see you tomorrow morning.